Hey team, here we go. It's October 29th. It's Friday afternoon. I'm still wearing my 8th grade uniform, and I'm going to talk to you today about the lead up to the Declaration of Independence. So by the end of this talk, we will be at 1776. This talk will cover from 1770 until 1776. So we'll pick up right after the Boston Massacre. However, first, you've got a test coming on Friday or Thursday of next week. I haven't decided yet. It'll be whatever is most reasonable and whatever you can work with as best you can. So let's start there, and let me show you what I've got for you on Google Classroom right now to help you with that. So what I've added, what you should see now is a couple things. You should see a set of flashcards, and hopefully this will work. Note here that hopefully this will work for you, this link, and it should bring up a deck of flashcards that look like this. You can also, I think, add them on your there's a Quizlet app. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a Quizlet app, and you can have it on your phone so you can study as you're on the train or the bus or whatever. Okay, if that is appealing to you. So that's something to take note of. Let me get rid of that because I think it's slowing down my computer. Then there's also these slides, and these are what I'm going to walk you through. You should finally note that I have reorganized your assignments so that now if you start from classwork, you come down the left side here, all of the assignments, really since we started studying history as opposed to the Constitution, the American origin story from before 1492, and the early colonies and salutary neglect leading to up to and through the French and Indian War, all that stuff is now under one category. It's colonial and revolutionary America. All of those things are fair game for the test next Friday, and I will talk to you more about what to expect, but you should expect multiple choice questions and short answer questions. And I'll show you more about what those are next week in class. All right, here is your slideshow. This is what we're actually going to spend some time looking at and digging into today. Please start working, computer. There's just way too many things open on my computer. I think that's the problem. But here we go. You didn't show up to listen to me talk to myself. You showed up to learn. We've covered this. Early colonies, Jamestown, Plymouth, New Amsterdam. I added a timeline of early New Amsterdam history there. Also tried to add a picture of little Lucy and Aram in a wigwam. Didn't work. Maybe it'll come later. 3 different colonial regions and their economies, triangular trade and salutary neglect, French and Indian War over the Ohio River Valley, join or die because there's an attempt at uniting in 1754. Didn't really happen, but by 1763, colonists were starting to think, maybe it's a good idea because they were getting mad at the British. Proclamation of 1763 leads to 1765 and the Stamp Act. And the reason I ran through all that is because I've talked about it elsewhere. You've got other videos. The Stamp Act, as you know, placed a tax on paper products like licenses and playing cards. And the response, you haven't seen these pictures before, the response was burning stamp masters, stamp collectors in effigy, pouring tea down the throats of tax collectors and torturing them essentially, and threatening to hang them. No, they didn't actually hang them, but it was not nice. All because of, say it with me, kids, no taxation without representation. That was the argument. It wasn't just that taxes are bad. It was that if you're going to tax us, you better at least give us a say in the government that we create. So during this pre-revolutionary period, they were upset because they had no vote and no say in the British government, and that government was taxing them and putting other limitations on them. This led to the Boston Massacre and propaganda thereafter. Oh, which led to this. Okay, guys, let's talk about this wonderful moment in history, or was it? The Boston Tea Party of 1773. I established with you in class on Friday that the Boston Massacre, that image right there is an example of propaganda. And that's defined in the document that you'll read. But propaganda, this is not actually what happened. The redcoats weren't standing in line. They were in straight up fights with colonists who had clubs and were clubbing them and, you know, throwing snowballs with rocks in them and all kinds of things. And the redcoats weren't well disciplined. They should have been able to handle it without shooting people, but they also weren't just firing on a poor, innocent group of people there. All right, this propaganda, though, outraged colonists, and it did lead to an end to the Townshend Acts in most cases, and the evacuation of most redcoat soldiers from Boston. After the Boston Massacre, believe it or not, the British decided, you know what the best thing to do is? Let's just pull back. Let's take the temperature down. And the temperature remained lower. Things were calmer up until 1773, when the British decided that they would change up just a little bit the way that tea was sold in the colonies. It would lead to one company being able to sell their tea at a cheaper price than everybody else. It would actually lead to the colonists paying less for their tea than they otherwise would have. But because one particular company was getting favored, the colonists didn't like it. They didn't like the British messing with their economy, and so they got upset. And they got particularly upset in Boston, where what they did was they dressed up as Indians for some reason, and then marched onto a boat that had millions of dollars worth of tea on it and dumped those millions of dollars worth of tea right into Boston Harbor, destroyed millions of dollars worth of property in protest of this Tea Act. And guess what, guys? The British government didn't like that very much. I know you're shocked to hear that. In response, the British passed what were called the Coercive Acts, or the colonists called them the Intolerable Acts. Either way, doesn't sound great. The Boston Port Act closed the port of Boston until damages from the Boston Tea Party were paid, which means everybody in Boston got punished, even if they weren't some of those crazy protesters or enthusiast protesters who jumped on that boat and destroyed that property. Everybody suffered. The Massachusetts Government Act restricted all people in Boston and throughout Massachusetts from holding town meetings that were examples of self-government. The British were suddenly saying, no, you can't govern. Remember those old days of salutary neglect? Well, we're just basically telling you, you cannot do anything without checking with us, and we're basically going to tell you what to do. Massachusetts. And then there's other stuff here. Administration of Justice Act. Hey, British officials can't get in trouble for doing anything in Massachusetts, at least not with the Massachusetts government. And Back to Quartering Act. That terrible idea has returned. Guess what? At this point, the tensions aren't going to get any lower, and they will not get any lower for the rest of colonists' history, or the rest of the colonists' relationship with Britain. Yup, Coercive Acts in 1774 lead to the formation of militias, these little grupitos of colonists who decide what they really need to do is get guns and other weapons and bullets and ammunition to be ready to defend themselves if the redcoats come at them. And what do you know? The redcoats considered that to be a threat and went and tried to take their ammunition and their guns, and what do you know, that led to people shooting at each other and killing each other and a war. April 19th, 1775 was the shot heard around the world on Lexington Green. Revolutionary War had begun. Some crazy stuff followed. I'm going to skip that slide. It's a good story, but I'm going to skip it. Revolutionary War starts with the battles of Lexington and Concord in April 1775. Shortly thereafter, an army is created by what is called the Second Continental Congress, a group of representative patriots from all 13 colonies. That army commander selected by the Second Continental Congress was none other than new General George Washington. There was another battle. There was also an attempt by those Continental Congressmen to at least extend kind of an olive branch of peace, where they asked King George directly, hey, all of these laws that Parliament has made, we think they're crazy and terrible, and we think that you're a reasonable guy, King George. Could we please just get back to the way things used to be in the early 1760s? To which King George said, no. You guys are rebels, and we are coming at you with troops. January 1776, more and more people were thinking, this is not just going to be a fight. This is going to be the end of our relationship with Great Britain. Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense, which was, the argument was, guys, it's just obvious. It's just common sense that you shouldn't have a little island on the other side of the world ruling over all of these colonies. And shortly thereafter, like 6 months later, a Declaration of Independence was signed by the Continental Congress. And that was the end of, well, that was the government of the new United States of America saying, we're not a part of Great Britain anymore. We are our own brand new country now. Ha. Let me lay that out just a little bit more for you. There's common sense, duh. And I think a wonderful explanation of how this works, of what common sense is, comes from good old, oh, this is a good one. Yeah, there's another one. But this is a good quote from one of the songs in Hamilton. I've been reading Common Sense by Thomas Paine. So men say that I'm intense or insane. You want a revolution? I want a revelation. So listen to my declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'm gonna compel him to include women in the sequel. You're welcome. There was that. That's from Schuyler Sisters. And it's basically showing how this document, Common Sense, which there's some other great lyrics in there. This document, Common Sense, leads to this other document, Declaration of Independence. I'm going to leave, I think, this whole idea for next week. But basically, the gist is, and this is the argument that gets laid out in the Declaration of Independence, we're all born with certain rights, like the right to life, liberty, and property. We need governments because everybody is going to claim that their life, liberty, and property are unlimited, and it's going to lead to fights. And so we need governments to resolve issues between us. And that means, well, we need governments, but those governments should protect our rights. And if a government doesn't protect our rights, we should be able to overthrow it. And guess what? The colonists, the patriots at least, thought that the British were violating their rights, and that meant they could rebel. Ta-da! All right, that's it. That's it for today. Let's go. You should go and read the documents that the document that I've also posted, 2 pages, and answer that Google form. All right. Have a lovely weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Adios for now.